Alright, I need to get this out. I've tried to move on, but I still can't forget what happened that night. This took place in Lagos about a year ago, and every detail still feels fresh in my memory. It's still the scariest experience of my life. So, it started with me trying to get home late from work. My office is on the mainland, but I live on the island, so commuting is always a pain. That day, I had to stay late because of a last-minute deadline. By the time I finished, it was past 11 p.m. The streets were almost empty except for a few downfalls and bikes. I wasn't comfortable taking public transport that late, so I decided to look for a taxi. I know it wasn't the safest choice, but at the time, I just wanted to get home. After a few minutes of waiting by the roadside, a black taxi pulled up in front of me. The driver rolled down the window and asked where I was going. He was an older man, maybe in his 50s, with a calm, quiet voice. His car looked old but clean, and something about him seemed normal, safe, even. I told him I was going to Lekki, and he nodded without saying much. He just told me to get in. Looking back now, I don't know why I didn't think twice. Maybe it was how late it was, or how tired I was. Either way, I got in. At first, everything seemed fine. The car smelled faintly of air freshener, like those little green tree ones. The driver didn't talk much, which I was okay with. I wasn't in the mood for conversation. But after a few minutes, I noticed something weird. The route he was taking didn't feel familiar. I've done this trip dozens of times, and I know the roads pretty well. At first, I thought maybe he was avoiding traffic or trying to take a shortcut. So, I spoke up. "Excuse me, this isn't the way to Lekki," I said. My voice was calm, but I was already a bit uneasy. The driver didn't respond. He just kept driving, his eyes fixed on the road. I raised my voice this time. "Oga, where are we going?" Still nothing. He didn't even look at me. That's when I started to panic a little. I looked out the window and realized we were driving through an area I didn't recognize at all. There were no streetlights, no buildings, nothing. Just an empty road surrounded by trees and darkness. My heart started racing. "Stop the car!" I shouted, but the man didn't flinch. His hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly, I could see the veins in his arms. At this point, I was really freaking out. I grabbed my phone to call someone, but there was no signal. I'm not joking, no bars, no internet, nothing. My stomach dropped. It felt like I was completely cut off from the world. I started banging on the door, trying to get out, but the locks wouldn't budge. The handles wouldn't turn. It was like the car had locked itself. That's when I noticed something even more terrifying. The driver's face. His eyes weren't normal anymore. They looked empty. Like he wasn't even human. His skin looked darker, almost like it was fading into the shadows of the car. And then, he finally spoke. His voice was deeper now, almost echoing inside the car. "You shouldn't have gotten in." My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. I started praying, muttering every prayer I could remember. I don't even know if I was saying the words right. The car kept moving, faster now, down this endless road that seemed to stretch on forever. I kept looking out the windows, hoping to see something, anything, but it was just darkness. No other cars, no buildings, just the sound of the engine and my own heartbeat. Then, out of nowhere, the car came to a sudden stop. I was thrown forward, hitting my head on the seat in front of me. When I looked up, the driver was gone. The seat was empty, and the car door on his side was wide open. For a moment, I just sat there, frozen. I didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking as I reached for the door handle again. This time, it opened. I practically fell out of the car, landing on the cold, hard ground. When I looked around, I realized I was standing in the middle of a long, empty road. The car was still there, but the driver was nowhere to be seen. I started walking, praying I'd find someone or something familiar. After what felt like hours, I finally saw headlights in the distance. A downfall pulled up, and the driver asked what I was doing there. I didn't even know how to explain. I just begged him to take me home. When I got back, I told a few friends about what happened. One of them said it sounded like a story they'd heard before, about taxis that take people to the spirit world. They said it's common folklore, especially in Lagos. Some say it happens to people who are at the wrong place at the wrong time. Others think it's a punishment for something you've done. I don't know what to believe. All I know is that I'm never taking a random taxi again. And if you're reading this, please, be careful out there. Some rides don't have a destination.